it's still quite early in the morning, but it's very cool to see we have a lot of people already interested in NFT. We have, right now, this is the investor panel, so we have quite a few different investors who are interested in the space. It's kind of, in my opinion, that investors kind of impact how projects get funded in general. So we kind of have some responsibility, or whatever our investment thesis is, kind of affect how this industry goes. So I think we only have a really short panel, so we can quickly talk about what our investment thesis is in regards to NFT. So I will have David to start, since you're the new lead investor.
Already talking too much.
But it will be quickly.
Yeah, sure. So well, I think the thing that's different about our approach in this space in general is trying to find teams who are expert at go-to-market. I think that sort of the challenge of the broader ecosystem, decentralized ecosystem, is it's very theoretical, and there's not a lot of expertise in how do you either build developer or consumer adoption. Mm-hmm. So finding the intersection of like strong consumer use cases and team expertise in figuring out how to achieve early, widespread adoption is one of the lenses that we look for.
Great, and Larry, I think you guys already backed quite a few NFT projects too. What are the company's back or your investment thesis?
So we've certainly made a few NFT investments. I believe it's 4 now, and I'll get to those in a bit. But NFTs, I think, it's a difficult topic, and I think it's a difficult topic because it's so new, and there's so many unknowns with the whole technology. I think this, as an industry, we tend to conflate digital scarcity with demand. And we assume one follows the other. We assume that demand just follows things just because something is scarce. When in reality, I don't think that logic holds true. To take an easy example, if you have an NFT good with a supply of 1 and a demand of 0, well, technically it's in scarce supply, but because there's a demand of 0, it's actually in an oversupply, right? And I think for a lot of NFTs, that is the problem today, where we finally figured out how to create digitally scarce goods, but the demand part is the hard part, right? And so to that effect, I think the scarcity is necessary but not sufficient, and finding ways to actually generate demand. What we look for are, and there's many ways to generate demand, but things like feedback loops, right? Figuring out ways to actually get consumers to use the damn thing, and that's one of the hardest parts, and I think that's something we're certainly still thinking about as an industry.
Great, and then I think you guys back quite a few people from public chains that are interested in NFTs. Can you share more about it?
Right, so I'm OJD Capital, and we backed a few public chains like Ontology, Thunder, and especially Cocos, which is the 3rd largest game engine in China. And then they're thinking about establishing the NFT network, like basically providing developers SDKs, APIs. And then I feel like at the end of the day, it's pretty much about how many developer can build on top of it and who is providing a better user interface, a better streamlined technical stat. And then we found out, so I talked to a bunch of companies like mythical companies like Lucyside. So they are pretty much focusing on either on the technical insights and the technical development, or on the IP strategy. So because previously I was with on the VR investment side, so it's pretty interesting that we're working with, I was on HTC Vive content team, so we're working with Star Wars, Star Trek, Ready Player One, Westworld. Every time we actually bring in a large title and the sales spike, we literally see the hardware sales.
All right.
So that is what I'm really passionate about, the IP stuff.
Thank you, Zhen. And Jeremy, I think do you want to add on? Or
yeah, I mean, I think there's a very important distinction between NFTs and all crypto assets that have come before it, such as protocol tokens, utility tokens. That's the fact that they're non-fungible. So unlike with utility tokens or protocol tokens, where VCs were going to be accumulating large amounts of the token before the network launch, you're not going to be seeing that with NFTs because each token is unique. So it's like VCs buying a bunch of Beanie Babies. That's just not the business that we're in. So instead, it's really about investing in the underlying products behind the NFTs rather than the NFTs themselves, which is a distinction from all other crypto assets before them.
I completely agree with this thesis. I think that we also kind of back some teams are developing these NFTs. NFTs is kind of just like a technical tool in a sense. It's actually more of a derivative in terms of the actual product And most of the teams right now are creating really cool games that has probably the best tech, good art. I think these are really important things that a lot of us are actually looking into. But I'm actually kind of curious, Jeremy, because you are actually one of the first one who did an ICO before this an ICO, and I think he probably has a different view on different things. What's your
Yeah,
opinion about
I
NFT?
mean, looking back to creating the first utility token with Augur, creating the first tokenized security at Blockchain Capital, the one thing you can't do when creating these new token standards or new token types is underestimate how broadly they may end up being adopted. Because I did that, I've done that twice now, and I'm not going to make that mistake again. I think NFTs could be used far beyond gaming. I've seen interesting IP applications, interesting real estate applications, and you know, where it goes, it's seemingly endless. And what's really cool about NFTs is they occupy a really nice regulatory niche, where I don't think they're going to be over-regulated. Because they are non-fungible, because they're unique, they're not going to fall into the area of securities or commodities.
Some of them have built-in utility value.
What?
Some of them have built-in utility value.
Yeah, I mean, so if you have the utility value, that doesn't really matter as much, but they really don't fall within any of the burdensome regulation that all crypto assets have faced before. So there's a greater likelihood for mass adoption, and in fact, I think NFTs will probably be the catalyst for the mass adoption of crypto assets.
Great, and I think that this is actually, Larry, I kind of want to learn more about DCG has back like CryptoKitties, I think what was Decentraland, I think it's and what was Horizon Games 2.
Yeah, so the three projects we've publicly announced would be Decentraland, which is this online virtual world where you have this digital scarce land. And that's really cool because actually, you know, I was just reading this literature by Edward Castronova, who's this virtual game economist. I didn't know that's a title that existed. Sounds like a dream job, but his idea was, hey, you can create virtual worlds and they'll actually compete with sovereigns, right? So if you don't like the United States government, you can unplug and essentially exit into Decentraland, right? And of course, we're far from there. But I think ideas like that are certainly interesting, and Decentraland allows for experimentation like it. You know, Horizon Blockchain Games is another, and that's, you know, the way I think about it is, you know, everyone here has maybe heard of Hearthstone, and imagine Hearthstone with NFTs where you can actually sell your cards. And of course, Blizzard, the developer of Hearthstone, will never create that because they have a profit motive, right? They'll make a lot more money selling packs of cards than having a secondary marketplace selling individual cards for users. So there's a lot of cool things happening in the NFT space that just combine all sorts of funky ideas that have never been done before.
Yes, and I also want to add on that, you know, the NFT kind of I guess wouldn't be out without CryptoKitties kind of thing. A lot of these ideas came out afterwards. I think that David, you also have some more thesis to add on that specifically.
Yeah, I'd like to pick up on the other comment about, so where does the ecosystem built around an NFT capture value, and can VCs or investors in general participate in that value creation? One of the beautiful things about decentralized networks is that they're diffuse in how their value is captured, that everyone is a participant, and it's not all coagulated into a single entity. So this question about, well, if let's say you're an IP creator around an NFT, and you're going to have some initial sale or an auction or something, a way to sell your original IP. Is that the end of your economic participation in the ecosystem now that everyone owns them? Will you participate downstream when your land, let's say your Decentraland, is sold or traded on a marketplace? One of the things about decentralized items is that they don't have to trade on only your marketplace. You can have a lot of other marketplaces that can trade them. So you can't count on owning the marketplace as the way to capture value. You can embed some rules in the smart contract so that you participate economically downstream every time something happens. So there are these are unanswered questions, or at least questions that a creator has to consider. And it goes right to the heart of, well, what are you investing in as a VC? Is there a place to invest that can capture enough of the value?
Great, and I think one of the most important thing regarding to the successful NFT project is kind of how you do the distribution effectively. So I think, Zhen, you also have some thesis in that end as well. Do you want to share more?
Right. Yeah, I think one example is, as we all know, the developer of EtherBots, they're also developing projects called Gods Unchained. And what they've done is they basically did a pre-sale. So it's pretty much like one stone, two birds. Not only they did the marketing, but also they successfully did the continuous fundraising. So it's an interesting perspective that only like non-fungible token can provide, because they are selling the real asset, which have the storyline, which have the real value that the investors slash player are able to participate in this network even before a launch. And then it's also a risk mitigation of the investment, because you actually have the asset before, and it's not like one hit investment. In traditional VC, we don't touch it because the asset doesn't worth anything. But then right now you're selling the real projects.
And you get to see some demand early on, even before the project's fully released.
Yeah.
Great. So we actually have different point of views on this so far. So I think that we only got 4 minutes left, really short panel. But if you want to say one thing that you think will be what you will see in this future, what would you think we'll see in this year? So do you guys want to start? I can start. I think there may be kind of new forms of fund coming out from the space as these projects are getting to the next stage. I think that we'll start to see a lot of chains who will also be exploring non-fungible tokens. We currently have quite a few, like 0x and Decentraland were technically fungible tokens going to the NFT space. And I think we'll see more and more of that too. We will probably see more and more traditional companies that will be exploring NFTs too, like gaming companies, like what we talk about. And like a lot of these, like Axiom Labs, and we'll be also working with more of these guys too. And I also think that that could be Augur related too. I don't know. Someday.
What I'd really like to see in this space is we talk about game item interoperability. So taking your virtual sword from one game, bringing it to another. I'd love to see some independent game developers coming together and starting to create standards for that. Because yes, it's ERC 720, whatever, but you're going to need more standardization for that, for figuring out how those games, like those traits all work with one another. And so figuring out standardization in gaming is really important if we want to see this be a massive driver of crypto asset adoption.
I agree. Larry?
Something that is very hard to do, but I think someone will get it right, is having true community-owned governance of a game that really incentivizes a lot more skin for the players, where they can actually govern the game. And it's a very difficult thing to get right for sure, but I think with the experimentation we're having, it might be possible.
I agree. That would be a fun experiment.
We need more virtual game economists.
We do.
I'm looking for the TweetDeck moment of the NFT ecosystem. So when some game or IP is launched by a single company and they're recruiting more developers to work on it, in the case of TweetDeck made Twitter really useful. It was the first power tool that changed your entire perspective about how useful Twitter could be. Can't wait to celebrate the moment of when a third-party developer takes the IP or the tokens around an NFT ecosystem and makes a much better game or experience or utility that is a must-have, can't live without, that just massively improves the entire excitement and value around an ecosystem. Then we know we've built something great.
Cool. Zhen?
Yeah, I'm excited about gamer financial freedom through you actually can off-ramp
Indie games can get funded this way creatively, maybe.
Yeah. The player can also earn virtual currency, just like Ready Player One, right? And then off-ramp into the fiat. So that is the unlock of the virtual and the reality. So non-fungible token could be a way to do it. And then, but the problem might be, where's the liquidity come from, and what is the incentive for the liquidity providers? And otherwise, the trading will not be that much realistic.
I agree. Liquidity will comes later. I think that is also we'll get to see more and more of these projects coming up really soon. But yeah, I think this is an interesting panel. Everyone has different perspectives contributing to this topic. But yeah, cool. I think. I think we could conclude it.
Thanks,
Great.
Alan.
Thank you.
Thank you.